Thank you for staying on. It's still Breakfast Live on GTV. On this segment, we'll be looking at the ongoing debate surrounding Ghana's COVID-19 levy and whether it should be discontinued or allowed to continue. The implementation of the COVID-19 levy has been a significant policy response by the government to address the challenges posed by the pandemic. We've gathered an expert panel to help us present the diverse perspectives and provide some insights on this crucial matter. At the table, I have Mr. Ni Amate, a lecturer at UPSA. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Amate. He's here with Chona Makwelo, who is a representative from the Association of Ghana Industries, which is a civil society organization advocating for equitable social policies. Throughout this interview, we'll examine the various dimensions of the Ghana COVID-19 levy, including its purpose, effectiveness, economic implications, impact on vulnerable groups and populations, and a whole other list, a tall list of perspectives to share at the table, and the gentleman will help us make that possible. So I'll start with you, Mr. Amate. When the COVID-19 levy was imposed, we were in the middle of a pandemic. The government was faced with the huge task of providing the necessary services that the population needed on time. And it needed to provide or to have the monies to be able to fund those activities. Do we still need the levy?
Well, the levy was assented, I think, the 30th March or so, and it started operating on 1st of May 2021. I think it was for a particular purpose, and the focus, like you said, was to get us out of the woods. There were many interventions that government made, and definitely those things had to do with money. There were months of free water, 50% amount taken off our electricity and stuff. So quite a number of interventions were done by government in order to cushion us and to take us out of the pandemic. Well, should it be continued or not? As the name portrays, it was for a particular purpose. Today, as we sit here, the World Health Organization says it's no more a danger. COVID-19 is no more a danger, and therefore all sanctions and all other restrictions have been lifted. So if we still want to keep it, then we need to give it a different name. What we did was to give it a specific name targeted at a specific pandemic. And so once the world has agreed that we are out of the pandemic, I think we need to scrap it. If it still has to go on, then we need to give it a different name.
So pandemic levy, emergency levy?
Post-COVID levy or something. Anything, but this should not stay.
Do you think that it has served the purpose? Did the health system benefit from the levy that was imposed?
Yeah, the levy helped us a lot. For instance, it helped in the procurement and distribution of these PPEs, and we had places being fumigated, you remember. And then I was surprised Agenda 111 is part of this whole thing, because I keep asking myself whether we have a Ministry of Economic Planning. If we do, or we did, we wouldn't be stampeding ourselves into creating 111 hospitals.
You don't think it's important that districts that do not already have hospitals should be given?
I'm not saying we could have been doing it progressively. Like I'm saying, if we had Ministry of Economic Planning, they know the growth rates each year, they know what to do, and so you don't starve certain districts and then wait till a particular moment, bring in a COVID fund, and then start.
For years, the economic planning has been part of the finance minister's job.
Yeah, so
we've had the Ministry of Finance and Economic Planning.
So we had it. If we did, then we failed, because we could have been planning gradually. Look, we know the number of students who get out of school each year. We know how many go into what employment. We know these are things that we work with, growth rate and stuff, so that you don't starve particular districts and areas, and then just out of one moment you decide that let me create 111 hospitals. What I'm saying is, if we know our growth rate and we know what we need at a particular year, we could do 6 for this district because that's what they need. We could, progressively we could, spread them around. But we don't, and these are the promises that we are unable to keep, and therefore we fail the people. We have had situations of people saying they will build 200 schools. By the time they left office, we had just about 46 or so at the level of completion. What I'm saying is this 111 thing, how many more years do we have to go in this term? We will fail the people. We make them so anxious. We make them happy by telling them I'll do this. But we definitely know that we can never complete 111 hospitals in this short term. And that's why I'm saying we should make realistic promises. But that's just by the by. What I'm saying is, yes, there were things that we benefited from, and which actually created a situation that, the COVID fund was a good idea. But we all know what controversies surrounded this whole thing. Lack of transparency, accountability, and all manner of rumors of corruption and all, and politicians calling politicians thieves because they feel people have not done what they're supposed to do. When politicians come to tell us that people do not respect them, people think they are thieves and stuff, it is because they themselves call one another thieves. And that's why this whole fund, which is a good idea, has sent all manner of ideas into people's minds, making them think that no. So after all, the money that we had from the COVID fund was used for personal benefits.
So the COVID fund was a separate setup that had its own separate team handling it. Mm-hmm. But the levy, mm-hmm, which was imposed on items that you buy, or some items that you buy, also went into a different. So let's not put the two together. If we put the COVID-19 levy and then the fund together, then we are broadening the scope a little bit. But let me come to you, Chonam. Should the levy stay or go? And I'll invite our viewers to take part in this conversation. COVID-19 levy, should it stay or should it go? Our WhatsApp number 055-5561-034. Let us know what your thoughts are on this matter. Chonam, for AGI, has it been a good idea? So should it continue?
Okay, thank you. Good morning, and good morning to your listeners. So I would like to begin by saying that when the COVID happened, it was a novel. I mean, none of us were waiting for COVID. And so you can imagine that the leaders would have it difficult to deal with the issue of COVID, and we would like to take every step possible to ensure that it is dealt with properly. So the introduction of the levy is just one of those steps to ensure that they mobilize the needed resources to be able to deal with issues around COVID. I would begin by saying that it is important at this stage to see an impact assessment of the levy. They've been charging it for some time now. As it is now, I have not cited any reports of how the levy has fared and whether, in fact, they've achieved the target for which it was set up, because that information will be very useful for us to be able to do a proper analysis of the 1% levy. Be as it may, for us in industry, any addition to cost it's a situation for us. It's a big problem for us. You observe that in the calculation of VAT, you have 2.5% national health, 2.5% get fund, and 15% VAT, and 1% COVID levy. So if you do the calculation, the National Health Get Fund and the COVID is 6% overall, plus the VAT, which is 15%, making the burden more than before when we didn't have COVID. So if you take off the COVID, then it lessens the burden.
But would 1% really be would it be a significant less burden if you already have all these taxes already there? Will removing them make much difference?
So most of our industries are huge industries. 1% is so significant. I mean, you're talking of businesses that are dealing in hundreds of millions of dollars and Ghana cedis.
So why are you concerned about the 1%? If you have such millions and millions of dollars or Ghana cedis, then 1% should not be a problem for you.
I'm saying that's the point. The point is that a little drop of CD add up to the cost. 1% is so huge. 1% of 100 million is huge. So I'm saying that it's a huge cost that add up. Also because of the double taxation as a result of how the straight levy is being calculated. From 2017, you realize that the calculation has changed. So what it means is that if this product was 100 cedis, before you would have just apply a standard rate of, say, 21%. I mean, I'm talking about the VAT, 15%, and the 6%. But this time, what's happening is that the calculation is done so that they will first add the 6%, which is the National Health, the Get Fund, and the COVID levy of 6%. They will add it to the cost of the product, so making it 106 before they apply the VAT of 15%. So in effect, you are actually paying double.
Who is doing that?
Government, DRA. So that's how the calculation is computed. So industry is more burdened as a result of all of these.
But if you're passing the cost on to the consumer, that's not a cost to you.
It's not that simple. I wish that it was that simple. You just pass it on. So mind you, if you're producing locally, you're competing with imported finished product. Okay, so let's say you're producing this bottled water. Mm-hmm. We have many other bottled waters that are imported. So if you're producing locally, you're dealing with many other costs. So you are paying workers, statutory payment, license, and all of that. Other array of many costs. What it means is that you cannot pass the corner to consumer, because if you do, you'll be uncompetitive, and you will not be able to compete with the guy who is just importing the finished product. But you also want to participate in the market, so you have to manage your cost. So in most instances, our industries end up assuming the cost and paying the cost, because they can't transfer it, because then that will be uncompetitive.
So you're saying that for AGI, the suggestion I'm hearing from you is remove the levy.
Well, that's for the viewers to make the decision. Our job is really to do the analysis to say that any increment or any addition of levy to the tax array, it's a burden to industry.
But if the government is providing a conducive business environment, and the amount of efforts that has gone into ensuring that there is a business environment to get back to post-COVID, because several businesses almost were grounded during the heat of the pandemic, and government says that some of these monies went into ensuring that we kept the space in a way that you can return to. Is that not legitimate enough?
Well, of course it's passed by Parliament, so it's legitimate. We're not talking about the propriety of the levy. What we're saying is we're analyzing to see the impact on industry. And as you know it, COVID is no longer an emergency situation. And in the era of a regime where almost on monthly basis there's an introduction of some new tax of the form. I mean, just we're in May, and we've had over 3 major taxes already introduced, and all of them are major burden to industry. So given those situations, you're very cautious that you like to take off levies as much as possible to lessen the burden that industry faces. See, we're in this huge situation we're facing as a nation because we don't have a lot of local indigenous businesses that are producing. There are teeming number of young people who are unemployed because the industries to create a job are not producing. They are struggling with all of these costs. So our concern is that it's important to evaluate some of these levies, especially the COVID-19 levy, and deal with it as it were. But suffice to say though that it's difficult for government to take off taxes once it's introduced. I can imagine because more money is preferred and they have many things to deal with. The last time I was in Freetown, at the airport, you pay $100 straight COVID levy. When you are coming out to, you pay $100. So $200 just for taxis. And it was so frustrating because you never budgeted for things like that. But I imagine that governments across the continent and the world are finding ways of taking advantage of these COVID-19 to the maximum. And most of these things are really affecting industry in a way that it shouldn't.
So do you or do you not agree when Mr. Amate talks about perhaps give it a different name and make it more relevant to the times, considering the fact that it's no longer a global health emergency?
Well, that's a good question. So if you said we should give it a different name, because every levy and tax must have relevance. But if there's no COVID, there's no COVID, you know. So different name, I'm not sure. My view be that, especially as far as industry is concerned, there should be an effort to take off some of these levies. I mean, minimize the burden for local industrialization. You really want to make sure that you create an environment for businesses to thrive. So every burden that appears to be unnecessary, just take it off.
Okay, let's play an assumptions game here. If the levy is taken off, what are the implications?
If the levy is taken off, what are the implications? Well, the burden will be light on the consumer because you need to know that for every levy that you put on any product, it is the consumer who bears the maximum effect. And so if that is the case, then that's one of the things that once it is taken off, it lightens the burden on the consumer. And then people, I'm sure, and let's not just look at it as if it's 1%. Like he explained, if you're dealing in millions of dollars, 1% is a huge, significant percentage. So I think that should be considered when we're looking at it. And I was being sarcastic when I say it should be given a different name. Because, I mean, if it is irrelevant, it is irrelevant. And there are too many taxes already. I mean, have you gone to the shop lately to buy items, ShopRite, etc.?
I have actually.
And then do the calculation on the taxes that you pay. It's mind-boggling. And you see, these are some of the things. Once you begin to talk about these things, then you veer into other things. I mean, we are too much of an import-driven economy. We import Coca-Cola from Morocco. And in spite of our cocoa production, we never add value to our products. So we export without adding value. And then we import finished products. So even Milo, cocoa products, are imported back into Ghana. All of these things will put pressure on your cedi. And 70% or so of our debt is calculated in dollar terms.
But what the things that we need to have in place to stop these importations will cost us money. Aliko Dangote has put up an oil refinery in Nigeria. We're told it's the biggest in the world. It must have cost several billions of dollars. So if we are saying that we need to do this and we need to do that, and yet we are asking for some of the levies to be taken off, where will we find the money? Do we keep borrowing?
You see, that is the thing. And it's more like a devious cycle. As we speak, IMF has given conditionalities. Aside the three major new taxes that we're burdened with, we need to also bow to the IMF orders. And that adds more. Electricity is going to go up, water. And then what? The idea is, if an individual like Dangote can do this, what happened to the governments who, and I'm not talking about this government, but all governments across the board, how come we couldn't deal with these things? I mean, why would you import toothpick? I mean, things like this, we don't need them. And we need to tame our tongue.
We don't need toothpick.
For what? You have brooms in the house. When I was growing up, I never knew there were things called toothpick. I was using broom until I got to know about it. And then
people will say dental floss.
A friend was even telling me not to use any of the toothpicks you find at the restaurant, because people use them and replace them. People use them and put them back. And, it might be a joke, but
people use them and place them back.
Yes.
Don't do that.
Well, so one of the servants was caught and was asked, "Hey, why are you using the toothpick?" And he said, "No, he doesn't use it that much. And anytime he used it, he put them back." I mean, that's frightening. What I'm saying is that let us focus on, now the IMF is telling us to use homegrown ideas to resolve our issues. So where are we going to do it? It means we're going to burden ourselves the more with these taxes. That is not innovative enough. That is not innovative enough. Where did we go wrong? Can we go back? Can we stop dollarizing the economy? Can we begin to decide that, well, I think the IMF is of course going to discipline us and whip us into line. But all I'm saying is that there are homegrown solutions that we could have adopted way back, rather than making it look like we got to the teether's end, and therefore, look, this $3 billion we're getting from the IMF. Every year, the foods we import amounts to $2 billion.
That's why you say we should tame our tongues.
That's what I'm saying. Let's tame our tongue. If you have a child at home and you give the child KFC, stop it. Yeah, I mean,
KFC is a business that is set up in Ghana. It's a foreign franchise, but it's employing Ghanaians, and some people have jobs because of the presence of some of these companies.
Whenever I hear a thing like this, that people get jobs because of these things, we're asking the government to cut down on the number of ministers. You know the response some of them give us? That we're going to create more unemployment by cutting down on government side. People have answers to anything, just like the Bible has become now. People can use it this way or that way. What we're saying is that if we're focused people, we could do what we need to do.
Okay, one last one from you, and I'll come to you, Chonam, so I'll get your reactions from what Mr. Mate is saying. If we say that, because we are still assuming that we are suggesting the levy should be taken off, okay? So that's an assumption that we are making. How do we prepare for future emergencies? COVID taught us that we should always be prepared. This one came at us unexpectedly, and we had to scramble to get the systems in place to deal with it. If we take the levy off, how do we prepare for the next emergency? Scientists say it will happen.
Yeah, it will happen. How did we come up with a COVID levy and a COVID fund? What I'm saying is that we don't need to wait for a thing like this to strike before we stampede ourselves into getting a solution. We definitely could rely on some of these taxes already in place, and if we will behave like persons who perhaps are heading towards a certain direction, we need to be focused and get it done. The taxes are already too many. Taking one off or two off will not spoil the soup. What I'm saying is that we have so many taxes in place already. We could still deal with emergencies unless we are just going to sit back, wait, let it strike, and then we use that as a means of bringing up another, levy. We look, when this government came into power, there were many taxes he graded, or it graded as nuisance taxes. So why replace them with another?
Jordan, what do you think? Mr. Amate seems to favor the idea of our assumption that the tax should be
Scrapped.
removed. What would your response be to some of his assertions?
Well, thank you. So if you look at the COVID-19 Act, it's been extremely silent on a sunset clause. So it doesn't have a timeline. It's just,
It's infinity.
Yes, that's where the problem begins from. So that's why it's important, as I mentioned, to have an impact assessment report, to see whether the fund the levy is meeting its needs and what should be done about it. So at this stage, we can only call for government to come up and tell us about the day the levy is coming to an end, or whether it's in perpetuity. Be as it may, yes, it is true that the levy is burdensome. I mean, it provides more burden. It's 1%, but it's not as simple as I mentioned. It allows for double taxation, because the way it is done, you have to pay and pay again. And if you're minded about the industrialization transformation agenda of the country, then you're concerned that the environment for private business should be conducive. So it's important to listen to your industry and make sure that the industry is giving the needed support for them to be able to thrive. As it is now, all of these taxes, as I mentioned, like the beginning of this year, we've had about 3 major taxes and levies introduced. You heard of the growth and the sustainability levy, which will be 5%, before profit. Okay, so it's assuming that you're making profit, but the reality is that most of the businesses are not doing as well. Not because they are not working hard, but because of the liberalized business environment we have, where there's massive importation of things that can be manufactured locally. Okay, we import rice from Vietnam.
And like I told Mr. Amate, these things will take time and they'll cost a lot of money. So let's wrap this up. What's your final comment? The COVID-19 levy, stay or go?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, the judgment as to whether it should stay or go would obviously be for the listeners to make. But for us in industry, it is important to reiterate that we want less and less of taxes and levies.
Right.
So
Mr.
that
Amate,
we can flourish.
stay or go?
Chopoli is talking like the politician, one moment lighten it, one moment where it's in the hands of. It should go.
All right.
It should go.
Mr. Ni Amate is a lecturer at UPSA. Chona Makpelo is a rep from the Association of Ghana Industries. They've been helping us to understand what needs to be done about the COVID-19 levy. Mr. Amate thinks it should go. Chonam is leaving it up to you. So tell us what you think, and thank you for staying with this conversation. There are other chats you need to stay around for. We'll be back after the break.
Koso kan wote beba, keep it up. Koso kan wote beba, keep it up. I want to kan wote beba, see, keep it up. Koso kan wote beba, keep it up. Ooh, ay, man don't tire. Ooh, One no back case. With the move to the bank, you the rat race. My phone know the me, I know the see things. You know the sleep on the boy, I know the mattress. Who be you? Where you think say we go lose sleep over you? Can you be the super? Hey, cause I can't wait it, baby. Keep it up. Cause I can't wait it, baby. Keep it up. I want to can't wait it, baby. See, keep it up. Cause I can't wait it, baby. Keep it up. Hey. Ooh, man don't tire. Ooh, telephone, no wire.
Music from the man we'll be chatting with a bit later, who has the name Alligator. So stay around for that conversation. It will come up very shortly. But thank you for staying through with us for all these chats, all your messages coming through on our WhatsApp number concerning our topic on the COVID-19 levy are coming in thick and fast. Manasseh Keche is saying, good morning, GTV. What happened to the ESLA account created by the then president, which would have helped deal with these emergencies? COVID-19 levy must go. Good morning, Thelma. The COVID-19 levy should be changed to National Vaccine Levy to support the production of vaccines locally. Francis sent us that message. Alhaji Dauda thinks the name of the levy should be renamed Severe New Unknown Illnesses Invasion Levies for Disaster Risk Reduction. That is a long name for a levy. Alhaji Dauda from Medina Estate. Thelma, we are paying COVID levy. So far, there is no accountability. How much has been collected, we don't know. So it should be taken off. After all, there's no more COVID. Alhaji Haruna sent us that from his building hospitals in every district is relevant and helpful. Then the levy should continue to help the project to be completed. Kofi Duku sent us that message from Kaswa. Dr. Simeon, Madam Thelma, may we know officially which part of Ghana enjoyed free water and electricity during the peak of the COVID-19 pandemic? I'm sure that you know the answer to that question, but thank you for sending all these thoughts across to us. We really appreciate you. Keep them coming in. Our WhatsApp number is 055-5561-034. This time we are talking about the celebration of the 2023 Civil Service Week, and they are also going to have the 2022 awards ceremony. The service celebrates a week as part of celebrations for the year. So staff members will also assess themselves and their performance, and they will be able to give themselves a pat on their back for good work done, and also take stock of what more needs to be done. So Civil Service Week coming up, and I have two persons at the table with me to help us understand what is going to happen over the next few days and weeks. Dr. Evans Agredako is the Chief Director at the Ministry of Parliamentary Affairs and Chairman of the 2023 CSW Planning Committee. Doc, thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me.
He's here with Mrs. Eunice Osai, who is the Director, Career Management Directorate at the Office of the Head of Civil Service. Ma'am, thank you so much for making the time as well.
Thank you too.
The civil service has come a long way. Take us through what that journey has looked like over the years.
Okay. Thank you. The civil service is one of the public services of Ghana, as listed in the 1992 Constitution, Article 190. It's one of, it used to be very big, but then we started seeding off some small. About 10 years ago, the local government service, which was a very big part of it, was seeded off. And so now the civil services are secured, but it has a mandate to assist governments in the formulation and implementation of policies for the development of the country. And so this it has been doing through many interventions. It advises government on programs and projects. It advises government on policies. And so policies that come out normally have gone through the mill. An issue has been identified, and some data has been collected, it's been analyzed, and then we come out with policy options for government. So one of the main things we do is to give government policy options, and then government determines which way to go. And it's important that when we have given governments the policy direction, the policy option, we also, when it's implemented, we also monitor, so that when something is not going well, we are able to make changes. And then sustainability is also key. So you see, planting for food, for instance. Planting for food has come, it's a policy. What happened? There's unemployment. Government wants to introduce some intervention. So what does civil service do? Civil service will then go out and collect data and see how bad it is, see what's going on, and give government some policy options. And then government decides, okay, this is the way to go. Then planting for food is born. And so that's how the civil service works. Everything that comes out goes through the mill, and it's the civil service that's behind it. Yes.
So you have many success stories to share with
A
us.
lot of them.
Dr. Evans, do you want to share a few? What have been your most significant achievements?
Well, I mean, as the director indicated, we've come a long way. The service has come a long way. Fundamentally, it was created to just ensure law and order under colonialism. But after independence, we had to then go into serious processes of development. And that meant that the reconfiguration in terms of training, building the capacity, making sure that we have even Ghanaians, not just at the Basingira level, but even the top level, to be able to fashion out development processes, for this country. If you look at Ghana since independence, even though we are not where we are, that we all will cherish, we've made some significant progress. I can tell you in authority that there are more women who are educated today than ever before in the history of this country. And it's as a result of policies and programs. We have been deliberate about it. If you look at our life expectancy has improved significantly. Access to water has improved significantly. If you look at access to electricity, our access to health care, these are all critical human development, indicators. And most of these are things that the civil service, has been behind. Of course, it has gone through good times. It has also gone through the bad times. Whenever governments do well, you understand, of course, normally government will take credit for it. When government do not do well, they blame the civil service, for instance. But the critical point that you need to know is that if the nation has made some significant progress, it's largely because there are people behind who are working day in, day out, or day and night, to underpin the development that we so cherish and we so seek. So as I said, if you look at the general governance architecture and the general things that we have done, if you look at the digitalization that has taken place, our access to maybe e-services, the online services, the DVLs, the passport office, the birth and deaths, and some of the critical things that Ghana card, we are looking at the NHIS, all those areas.
You did all that?
No, you see that most of those agencies are 11 under the authority of a supervisory ministry.
Okay, tell us what some of the agencies that work under the civil service are.
No, but
give us an idea of what the scope of your.
No, if you look at the civil service as currently constituted, has about 28 ministries and almost about 23 different departments. But if you looked at the ministries themselves, the ministries all have some supervisory agencies. If you go into, for instance, if you look at the Ministry of Energy, you have the GMPCs and all the GOIL and all of them all exist under the Ministry of Energy, for instance. And you unpack it. So every ministry, and if you even look at even the Ministry of Local Government, Ministry of Local Government has an overarching supervisory role over some aspect of decentralization and so on. So if you look at even the name, the Ministry of local government, decentralized and rural development, that should tell you that it encompasses a number of the decentralized units, and there's no policy, for instance, that will emanate from that sector without a sponsoring minister. That means it has to be rooted through the Minister for Local Government, for instance. So that is how it works. And what I'm suggesting to us is that the significant progress that we have made, the difficulties notwithstanding, are largely because the civil service has played that overarching responsibility and the overarching role to make sure that
policies, programs, as my director related to, the policies, programs that emanate are even underpinned by research that must be undertaken. We are talking about evidence-based policies and programs, is that not it? So you need to have data. Some of us have argued that if your policies are not underpinned by data, you have implementation nightmares. So the type of research that must be undertaken, the analysis that must be undertaken. We are not policy advocates. You will be policy analysts. And the policy analyst will be the one who would analyze and give a government all the policy options that are available. And then, of course, you know that the politicians have a political mandate. They have a mandate of the people. And therefore, based on their mandate and based on their party manifestos, etc., they will decide that this option perhaps will yield a net maximum benefit from our people. So they go for it. And then when that is done, it becomes the responsibility of the civil service to underpin the critical implementation, what we call the action part of the policy cycle. So that is what it is that is done. And of course, policies are not cast in iron, they are not cast in gold, and therefore sometimes there are some unintended consequences as a result of the implementation. And that is where the evaluation then comes in, the monitoring and evaluation comes in. So as you monitor and you evaluate, you'll be able to identify whether indeed there are deviations from the original objective that you set for yourselves. If there are deviations, what is accounting for the deviations? For instance, or if there are unintended consequences. Maybe a road is constructed or an overhead is constructed and that leads to flooding in a particular area. Nobody anticipated perhaps that when that bridge is being constructed or when the overhead is being done, it will lead to flooding. So that flooding is as a result of what we call the unintended consequences. So we take care of all these things and then revise the policy. And so we see that the policy cycle is a never-ending process, and government will always have unfinished business. So that cycle will mean that some evaluation have been done, some monitoring will be done, and sometimes there have been instances where even civil servants will advise government that this policy is not going to work, so let's terminate. So it will lead to a policy termination.
When have you done that recently? What? Give us an example of a policy you had terminated because you thought it through and you suggested that it would not work.
Well, examples are not readily coming to me, but what I'm saying is that it's a possibility that we'll always have to think about, or some adjustment will have to be made. You understand, from time to time, that will help us deal with some of the problems that have actually cropped up as a result of the policy that we have. Maybe perhaps by the time we finish our work.
The political figures are the faces and the names that we see. We see the ministers, we see the MPs,
yes,
and we see the heads of the agencies and institutions.
Right.
But you're saying that the civil service is one of the wheels on which government executes
exactly,
or implements its policies
right,
for the public, if
yes,
I understood you correctly.
Yes, yes.
So this year, 2023, you are going to have a celebration. Right. What's going to happen?
Okay.
And then the award ceremony.
Okay, thank you very much. And so if we have to play that role, it means that we must equip ourselves well. And so we take capacity building very serious. So that's one of the areas that we put very much a lot of premium. Now, this year we are celebrating what we did last year. And so the Civil Service Week actually some of the activities have started because we started playing our football matches. Last year we had the football tournament. It was very popular. This year we had ministries and departments registering for the football matches. And in fact, we introduced the female one as well. So we've played the 1/32, 1/16, 1/8. We are almost at the end of it. We reserve the rest for next week. And so on Wednesday, which is tomorrow, there'll be the press lunch at the Closter Auditorium at 10 a.m. I hope viewers will participate. It will be streamed live. And then on Thursday, there'll be a cleanup exercise. We'll be cleaning the ministerial enclave. Cleanliness is next to godliness. And in fact, this activity is a very interesting one where you have a minister in a ministry come down and clean with all the staff. Sometimes there are some ministries where some of the staff don't even see the ministers. But this is one of the days the minister comes down. Maybe you are holding a brush and the minister collects it and is sweeping. So that's one of the interesting programs that we have lined up for the celebration. Then on Friday, we have a church service. So we have a Christian church service and we have a Muslim one. The Christian one will be held at the Closter Auditorium once again. from 12 to 1, and then the Muslim will be held at the mosque from 1 to 2. We are holding the church service to say thank you to God. We've gone through a whole year, and I must say that we haven't had any major incidents, and we can only thank God for that. And then we are asking for his blessing for the year we have entered. Yes.
And there's the awards ceremony as well. When does that happen?
Yeah, thank you very much. And you realize that the service is coming under a theme: enhanced service delivery and economic transformation in Ghana, the civil service in focus. That's very critical for us. I mean, if the nation would develop, we would need to have all hands on deck. The award ceremony is important. If you look at the Civil Service Act and you look at
when is it happening?
It's happening on the 2nd of June. 2nd June,
yes.
2023 at the International Conference Center, where we recognize hard-working civil service staff and others who have supported the execution of the mandate of the civil service in the course of 2022. So we are looking at categories involving chief directors, some of them are directors, some of them other staff, among others. So across, the hierarchy, and of course individuals and institutions who have over the years, played a significant role.
Congratulations.
Yes.
On Monday 29th, we have a public lecture.
A public lecture on the 29th.
Yes.
So tomorrow, press launch at the Clocksag Auditorium. Thursday, clean up exercise around the Ministry's Enclave. Friday, church service and also the Muslim service.
Yes.
2nd June, there is the award ceremony.
The Monday will be the public lecture.
Of course, the public lecture.
And then the whole of last week will be the policy fair for the civil service.
Remember that the press launch will stream across the platforms of the civil service, and so get involved with all their activities, all the ones that we've mentioned here, and let's appreciate the people who work behind the scenes to make our lives that much better. Civil service, congratulations to you and happy service week. We'll be back for the very last part of the program. Let me appreciate Dr. Evans Agridaku, Chief Director, Ministry of Parliamentary Affairs and Chairman of the 2023 Planning Committee for the Civil Service Week, and Mrs. Eunice Osai, Director, Career Management Directorate, Office of the Head of the Civil Service. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for making the time. Alligator app is ready, and he'll be sitting down with Kafui, who should ask him why alligator? Why not crocodile or any other animal, but the alligator? We'll find some answers on the lighter side of the breakfast table after this.